We've now covered the key features of API Doc, and in this video, we'll be adding a few finishing touches to the documentation site. Sometimes you'll want to add general information to your API documentation. For example, you might want to include installation instructions or links to other important resources, or perhaps the contact details of the authors. API Doc allows us to add Markdown-based header and footer sections to the doc site for this purpose. So to create these, we just need to make Markdown source files and point to these in the config. So let's now kill our grunt server, and we're going to create a new directory where we can put some additional source files for our documentation. So we'll go make dir docs, and then we're also going to make a subdirectory with files specifically for the API documentation. Let's begin by creating a header file for the doc site by going touch docs API, and we'll call this header.md. Let's now open the header markdown file and we'll put in some info. So I'm just going to go welcome to the Print Bay API docs, and we'll say see postman.json for a postman collection with all included endpoints. Now, to include this header in the doc site, we're going to need to open up our API doc config file down here, and we're going to need to add a new key to this file, which will be header, and we'll assign an object to that. We'll then put a property there, title, and we'll assign to this getting started, although you can put whatever you want. And then finally, we're going to add a file name property here, and we'll assign to this the path to the header file, which is going to be docs API header.markdown, like that. All right, so now we'll come up here and we're going to restart our docs server by going npm run docs serve API. Once the server is running, you can come back to the site and then refresh it, and you'll notice we now have this getting started section up here, and here we can see our markdown has been rendered into the docs there. Let's change tack a bit now and talk about versioning the API. Over time, as you add more endpoints or as you deprecate or upgrade existing endpoints, you'll probably release new versions of the code base. So let's say that in Print Bay version 1.1, you decide to add a new field to the items resource. For example, you might decide to offer your prints in multiple sizes, like small, medium, and large. In that case, you'd probably add a size field to the item object. Now, we could overwrite the existing documentation when this happens, but it would mean developers using the old version of the API would lose access to that original information. So what we're going to do is, here with our post items endpoint, let's add another property to the doc block, and this one is going to be API version, and we're going to set that to 1.0.0. Then what I'm going to do is copy that doc block and paste the copy right underneath the first one. And in the second doc block, I'm going to change the version to 1.1.0. And we're also going to add the proposed additional API parameter. So we're going to go API param, we'll make it a string, and we'll call this one size. And I'll put size of the item as the description. Once the code rebuilds, take a look at the create an item endpoint, and you'll see in the request body, we now have that size parameter there. Now that we've added a version to this endpoint, you'll see in the version dropdown here that we can select the previous version to compare to. So this allows developers to retrace the changes in the API from previous versions. Before we finish this video, let's go ahead and delete that version 1.1 doc block, as we won't actually need it now. I just wanted to show you that it can be done.